So I did my logistics timelines project on United States currency, and the logistics of United States currencies have changed and adapted over time to become what it is today. Distribution and management processes have gotten better as our nation has grown. So exchange of value is the primary economic value of the finance channel, and it expresses the relative price of a good in terms of other goods. The main items in any exchange of value nowadays is currency, which is commonly known as money. But this was not always the case, because before there were forms of currency, bartering was used for exchanges of value transactions. And bartering is just when someone exchanges goods or services for someone else's goods or services in exchange. And this still happens today, but just not nearly as much. And currency has been the greatest exchange of value throughout United States history. The first currency introduced in United States history were colonial notes in the late 1600s. First colonial notes were created because of a shortage of coins to pay soldiers at the time. And so this was basically an early example of supply and demand, because they didn't have the coins to pay the soldiers, so they made notes. Ben Franklin aided in development as well as distribution of early colonial notes. He ran a newspaper printing press where he printed and helped distribute his colonial notes throughout the original colonies of Pennsylvania and Delaware. And then his son eventually took over that business and ran the printed press. And the continental currency was introduced by Congress in 1775, where they issued $2 million in a bill of credit. But they ran into a problem where they ran out of the funds necessary to continue the war. So they just kept printing money without the actual funds to back it up. Obviously, they still won the war and they were able to claim their independence, but was left with a large amount of debt. And inflation occurred because they didn't focus on the early stages of the planning hierarchy, so they were not able to actually predict the inflation coming. So after the United States declared its independence in 1776, they later started to develop better and more durable printed currency, such as the $2 note. In 1785, they created and adopted the dollar sign, which is the key symbol and marketing tool of the United States. And then next came the first Bank of the United States. And this was created as a form to make a system of credit. And it also was the first notable international logistics transaction, as there was a substantial interest in the bank that was purchased by European investors. Additional forms of currency were added in the regulation of coins, which was the result of the Mint Act. The free banking era began an era where America's states and territories started to circulate their own currency. And this ended up being a bad idea, which got reverted. This centralized banking led to the destruction of the second bank of the United States. This is also when the government decentralized the banking system, which allowed all the states to open and govern their own banks. The National Bank Act of 1863 was designed to create a national banking system again and establish a national currency. This enabled the federal government to provide loans and allowed Congress to promote economic growth. In the 1870s, the government started to create gold and silver certificates. These were distributed to individuals who would deposit gold or silver coins into a bank in exchange for paper certificates. The United States fell into its worst depression in the late 1800s as a cause from the banking panic and the stock market crash, and this led to the creation of the Aldrich-Vreeland Act of 1908, which provided emergency currency during the crisis of depression. And the stock market crash led to investors trying to withdraw any amount of currency they could from their banks, and because they didn't know if they were ever going to get their money back or if it was just going to disappear. And the ending of the war ended at World War I, started a new era of recovery, and it increased the value of American currency. It was like a bounce back. The production and distribution of counterfeit currency became an issue in the United States in the 1930s. And its main perpetrator was Victor Lustig. and he was able to product and distribute counterfeit currency by the use of a money-making machine, which he made, but he was eventually arrested, and then after that, the spur of counterfeit currency dropped heavily. The Banking Act of 1933, which is also known as the Glass-Steagall Act, was designed to regulate interbank control. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the FDIC, was created to separate commercial banking and investment banking. And so the ATM was first introduced in 1963, and these revolutionized the banking industry by eliminating the need to visit a bank to conduct financial transactions. And this was a great improvement in the logistics channel because it shortened the steps for a person to access their cash from a bank. And the Bretton Woods gold standard was ended in 1971 by President Nixon. He did this to stop inflation, and it ended up working. Other pluses were employment and production were also increased at first as a result of this. In the modern era, the newest form of currency is digitally created. These are cryptocurrencies, and they're defined as an internet-based medium of exchange which users cryptographically functions to conduct financial transactions. And in my opinion, it's too early to tell if they're secure because we don't know too much about them. And should you invest in it? I think it's like a risk-reward investment because there have been a lot of people that have done really good investing in cryptocurrencies. But I just think it's too early to be messing around with it for me, at least. This is the last slide. It just sums up the whole paper and the presentation. So American currency relates directly to the development of the United States logistics as well as international logistics. It's backed up by a key concept of understanding currency, which is the exchange of value. And it has been the greatest exchange of value throughout United States history. And that's it.